I think we are live. We have a special one today. We got. I don't know. Is this a threesome, foursome? I don't know. Threesome.
The best
No,
ever.
it's threesome. No, it's threesome in the way you count, but because we're twins, it might be even bigger than that, right?
Lovely. Well, originally we were gonna do Marco here. Me and Marco have discussed classic Mini Cooper S's Mark Ones for about a year, like almost a year now. I think I looked, excuse me,
Yes.
back on our messages, and it's been like a year today, or yesterday, or
hmm
something like that. But we also have his brother here, his twin Felipe. So thank you both for being here. Awesome. I'm excited for this. We got a cool story behind the mini here. So thanks for being on, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having us. We are very grateful.
Yeah, it's Mike. So it's our honor to be here. Um, First, because we have a significant vehicle at hand, but more importantly, because of our family and friends. That's really why we're here. And the story behind here, Mike, is I guess we hit it off really because you're an incredible person. And then when you have this podcast, it was over the moon. But I guess it was because of your Cooper S that you found in California, and it was listed. And you probably will share the story or have shared the story about this. But you had a picture of the cosmic wheels with racing slicks. And so I start kind of telling you, like, hey, I know a car that those racing slicks will be period correct. And that's how I started hitting it off, right?
Yeah, yeah. You still hit me up for those Dunlop racing tires every day, pretty much. So I don't know.
Yes.
I might have to keep them. I don't know, but you still gotta
So,
persuade me.
yes. Um, I think that this can go in many different directions, and we're going to make it as concise as we can. I do apologize beforehand if it gets a little lengthy. I'm very detail oriented and meticulous. Done a significant amount of historical research on a vehicle. So, without further ado, um, the vehicle we have is a Morris Cooper S. It's a 1965 left-hand Export Deluxe, English white with black roof. It was built late April 65, 27th of 65, and exported to Madeira Island on the 30th of April 1965. So it sat on the dealership for a significant amount of time, and it was first registered um, late April of 1967. So the historical significance was the gentleman that first purchased this vehicle was a very well-known racer, and he had raced several events with other vehicles. He has owned an Isetta. He set pretty good times with that. Then he had an MGA. Then he had the Triumph TR4, and finally the Cooper S. So his name was Antonio Pereira, and he was also nicknamed Cookies because he owned a cookie factory in Madeira Island. Now,
Was this back in the '60s when this happened? Like he got it new?
yes, he bought it brand new. And Mike, so that to kind of give you a historical kind of reference point, back in the days, as most of the countries that are in development phases or even developed, there was not many vehicles on the road, right? And not many people had the financial means to purchase a vehicle. They either used public transportation or walked and so forth. So um, at the peak of the classic mini racing history, that's when, in essence, this vehicle was purchased because it was 1967. So
Right.
this was kind of in alignment with Monte Carlo. Who wanted to go racing had a Mini Cooper S. That's basically it. Um, there was other significant vehicles at the moment, or at that moment in time. I mean, we're talking about Renault Gordinis, which is probably, if people were to search online for a Gordini R8 Gordini, that's a significant rallying car. There's other ones such as the A110 Gordini. Um, but this car basically was the go-to weapon when you went rallying. So yes, so that's the car that basically Among all the vehicles that Antonio Pereira Cookies had, this is the one that really marked him for a lifetime.
Yeah, this
Um,
this story gets really interesting. But before we kind of jump into that, let's let me backtrack and discuss with you and Felipe is were you guys always into minis or did this kind of fall into your lap? I know kind of the story behind it and we'll get into it. But did you
mhm.
ever own any minis prior to this? Was a Cooper S always on your radar because of the racing history? I know you're into tons of cars and rallying and stuff like that. What's
Mhm.
your like your earliest memory of minis and wanting to get into them?
So we were little at the time, and I remember riding in the back of this Cooper S once. It was during Christmas time, and we went to, my brother was driving, his wife Tina was on the passenger seat. Now the car had already a Group 2 roll cage, the bucket racing seats, and so forth. And this thing is idling, but it had an abnormal idle. You could tell that this was not your standard car. I mean, the idle was probably at 2,500 RPM. It was abnormal. And I kept hitting my head on this roll cage, but it was such a joy to ride in it. I mean, it would fly. This thing would go take turns and just go through the roads, carving the turns like nothing, like nobody's business. Um, and so, to answer your question, no, we were not into minis, but that really marked us as a vehicle. It was incredibly well known. We were not aware of it at the time, but it was such a hoot to be in it, and that really was, my brother being such a car person, it really drove us into getting a connection into the Scooper S.
So, at what year did your current Cooper S kind of come into play? Were you searching for one? Did how did that connection start?
So,
Right, if I may,
so
um, Mike, to answer your question directly, no, minis weren't really in our background. My brother had a Triumph
Right.
Spitfire. That was one of the cars he's had. And that was probably his first involvement with perhaps that kind of car. He used to build Ford Escorts Cosworths for rally. And the Mini was a car that he always liked. I understand he had a Gordini, Renault Gordini, and then he bought the Mini Cooper. So the Mini was in the family for many years, and unfortunately, my brother passed away during COVID. And we inherited the Mini in 2020, right, Marco?
yes, 2020.
2020, and we inherited the Mini.
So, right.
And so then
Um,
that's
mhm.
that's how we
Go
started
ahead.
with the Mini Cooper.
And
Right.
then you guys basically dove headfirst,
Yes.
researching it,
And then some.
these parts.
Yes.
We'll get into why I call Marco the NOS king, but so kind of go to how you got into the mini, how it kind of fell into your lap, and then let's get into the story behind it because the story behind it is super cool. I know you have tons of pictures and articles from its racing history and rallying history. So let's jump into that.
Exactly.
Mike, I think that probably to have the picture, the car in itself is actually very important, as you mentioned. Uh, I would say is the protagonist of this story, but I
Definitely.
think the man behind it, the man behind it, I think is just as important, if not anything
Of
else.
course.
So if maybe, um, so my brother Ilidio Correia was well known in the island and throughout the world actually for building cars, rally cars specifically. Um, he raced the Peugeot. He built the Peugeot 306 Maxi. That was the one that won in 2004 in the rally. He built Mitsubishi's Evolutions. He built Ford Escorts. He had the practice car from Colin McRae, the Subaru. That was a car he also built in the
Right.
island. And so the Mini was something very special to him. And so he actually started one league that was just a female league that he built, where women from all sides of the world, uh, worldwide, could compete. and the car that he prepared and the pilot that he taught still holds the record till today, 20 years later.
Wow.
And so, uh, just to say that he held on to this Mini should speak volumes of how important the car was to him, and the pedigree that it had. So that's probably the introduction that I just wanted to emphasize, that there's a whole storyline between the car and whoever owned
And
it. My brother can fill in.
no,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, and that's why I love this podcast, because it's not just about minis. You know, we can do a podcast about, you know, modifications, wheel sizes, this and that, but these are the stories that I find really interesting. It's not necessarily about the car, but the driver, the pilot, whatever you want to say. And this story is very interesting. I know Marco's kind of dumped a bunch of information on me, you know, in messages about, you know, cookies and your brother and his racing history, and it's really interesting. So let's jump into that. Let's get behind the driver and see kind of what the dirty details are here.
Okay. So I'll take the lead on this one, Mike. And
Go for
then
it.
I guess, Philippe, if you want to intervene, put thumbs up so that we don't talk over each other. So this gentleman that I introduced as Cookies, because he had a cookie factory, did buy the Cooper S in 1967. So as soon as he bought the car in 1967, he entered a rally. And this rally basically was Mount Hill Climb. So this Mount Hill Climb, to give you just a little bit of a summary and an image of Madeira Island. Madeira Island is closer to Morocco than Portugal. It is really the tropical island, which is similar to Hawaii with many microclimates, many different elevations. So although this race, Mike, was like a 2 mile race, the elevation from sea level to where it ended was 3,500 feet.
Wow.
Now, wow. And the roads themselves, think about the Monte Carlo Riviera where you have the twists and turns and twists and turns. That's pretty much the race from the sea level to 3,500 miles up the mountain.
This is like a
So,
proper hill climb.
correct. And the roads were cobblestone. So Cookies gets in this Cooper S. And despite many other different vehicles involved or participating in this race, including, we're talking about BMWs, Alfa Romeos, even a Ford Mustang V8, Cookies was flying up the mountain and he won the rally, right? He was victorious that time. So in 1967, he already participated in two more rallies that were really, there was the springtime rally and another rally. And again, he comes home with the trophies with the Cooper S. So this sets the stage to 1968. So 1968, the what we call the Porto Wine Rally or International Rally, he gets the car into a shipping container or ship and takes the car to this race in Portugal. So actually, if you go on FIA website, and thank you to Stefan, which is the second owner of the vehicle, and Daniel for sharing that information, our car is still listed on that website as number 34. Actually, the TAP tag that came with the car in 1968, Stefan, which is the second owner, has it or had it and donated to someone who has a museum in the island. I am hopeful, fingers crossed, that one day I can bring that back and have it with the car. So anyhow, him and his co-pilot Bilal participate in this rally. And unfortunately, and I shared with you, he did not finish the rally, not because he had a mechanical failure, but because they were doing a rally stage at nighttime in dirt roads. So Cookies was really giving it some stick. This thing was like flying through the dust, right? So his co-pilot is like,
He was
he's
giving it the
watching.
cookies.
Yes, he's giving it the cookies like he means it, right? So, so his co-pilot, in the midst of this darkness and dust in the air, starts having a panic attack, right? So they're passing on like slower machinery and he looks at Cookies and says, "Listen, how do you stop? Well, I'm gonna jump out." And so Cookies looks at him and comes to a stop. And that's it. He didn't finish the rally. And he says, even till today, in some later, interviews with Cookies, he says, we laugh about it all the time about this event. We became friends, and we still are friends. but that's why we didn't finish.
What
So
kind of rally co-pilot?
yes,
Isn't he
well,
supposed
I
to
guess
read? He should be reading the notes, not looking.
well,
But cookies was quite a driver.
yes,
You know, I think that just to understand back in the day, they're not this team was not a factory backed up team. Everything was done through ingenuity back in the island. To give you an example, the engine protection, at the bottom, the
Mm-hmm.
underside. What they did is they took springs from a truck, the leaf springs, and make a protection plate.
Oh.
hmm so
So the car was even shipped to Spain and it competed in Spain. And in Spain, what you can think about it is that it wasn't like asphalt; it was all in the dirt road. And Bulishingas had the foresight to say, you know what, we're going to make it even faster. The car at the time had a wet suspension. He drained the complete wet suspension. The car was on shock mounts. That's how he raced it.
yes,
And then at the end of the race, he asked politely the Spanish competitors to kind of fill the suspension. And out of spite, they didn't do it. So he had to drive all the way from Spain to the mainland Portugal on the suspension on the bump stops, and then have the car shipped to the island.
yes.
So he was quite a competitor.
Well,
Wow.
so this 1968, Mike, and basically he did not finish, but and like Philippe was saying, he goes to the famous now Jarama racing circuit in Spain, right? And he takes the Mini Cooper over there. So this is like a 500-mile from mainland Portugal trip to Jarama. He gets there with the Cooper S and starts, watching the competitors in the racetrack. And he says, you know what? Before I head out there, let me just lower the suspension, make sure that this thing is like low to the ground, as low as I can get it. That's the ingenuity behind him, right? And then he also says, um, rather than running the racing tires that the factory suggested, Mike, he would run a lower size, which would allow the Goodyear tires to expand. Car would become lower to the ground, but also have more patch contact to the road. And so he lowers the suspension. I think he starts mid pack, and there was some heated events, and he gradually starts making up the scoreboard. Well, he ended up getting number fourth out of I don't know how many competitors, but he was racing against Porsche, Lotus, BMWs, you name it. So the Spaniards, like my brother said, got really enthusiastic about Cookies and his driving skills and the Cooper S. And when they found out the trick, they played deaf ears to him when he wanted to refill the suspension, and he had to come on bob stops all the way from Spain to Portugal on a 500-mile trip back, right? So it was like the haha.
I'm sure that was super comfy.
Yes,
Oh yeah, it was.
he did later on say that the car survived, but his back did not. Um, I think soon after, about this around this time in '68, that's when the Cooper S comes and gets like fully modified by BMC Speedwell to a full-fledged FIA Group 2 rally car. Now, that is so that is such an evolution of the Cooper S. So the Cooper S itself, this one was a 1275, which is, as you know now, it's the largest motor they ever produced, right? So they bumped it out to 1380 cc's.
Did Cookies like commission them to do that, or did they see his talent and say, "Hey"?
Both.
Both.
It was
Okay.
both. Yes. So Cookies gets this Cooper S and he gets it fully modified to FIA Group 2. 1380cc, high compression engine, light and flywheel, straight pipe gearbox, 4.3 diff. I mean, headers, speedwell intake manifold, SU carbs, you name it. Dual oil cooler, dual water radiator. I mean, this thing is all decked out. The grill is like protruding from its sittings from about an inch and a half, which we still have it today, with quick releases. It has like a few blades on the grill removed for additional cooling. It has SEV Marshall headlights and fog lights that were probably at the time, Mike, and even today sought after as the classic headlights to go to. These headlights actually were fitted to, this is a French manufacturer. I don't know if many people know about this, but this is SEV Marshall The logo is a black cat with yellow eyes, and the story goes that the
For
gentleman that
uh,
was
for
assigned.
people watching the video, here's some new old
Yes,
stock lamps from Marshall. See, I'm not.
yes,
You're not the
hmm
only new old stock king here. Look at that. I just don't post it.
yes. We are both kings when it comes to that. So in '69, then we have pictures of the car already documented in certain books and historical significant books. And the car has these headlights and the fog lights, similar to the fog lights that we use in Alfa Romeos, Ferraris, Porsches, you name it. So this car got the best of the best. When it came to Cookie's Cooper S, there was probably two or three in the island. This was it. This Cooper S was standing tall right next to 911Ss or RSs, you name it. That was Cookie's Cooper S. So in '69, he comes to participate in the most significant rally of the region. So there was many rallies that really did not have the refinement or the name brand as they do or did for the rally that goes around Madeira once a year. At the time was a 1.5 day, Mike, 900 or 800 or 900 miles. This was basically nonstop day and night events, and Cookie Scooper was like flying through these events.
These are the
So
good old days of rallies.
yes,
They're just like roughing it.
yes. So the historical significance of Madeira, besides this incredibly beautiful tourist area, is the rally. The rally actually um, became quite significant in the World Cup racing in the '80s. Although many names such as Ari Vatanen was already there in 1979, so it has a very long history. Starting in 1959 was the first race around the island, and until today they have it. But in the '80s and '90s, the who's who of motor racing was in Madeira. They went to visit. They brought their machines. I mean, this was one of the top contending events. So, go ahead, Mike.
I would say that Madeira has a little bit even more prominence that the people are not aware. We here learned in school about the Boston Tea Party,
Correct.
right? They were throwing over not tea, they were throwing over Madeira wine
Mm-hmm,
overboard.
mm-hmm. And another fun fact, Mike,
Hmm.
that people don't know, besides we being like such a small island, but guess what? Cristiano Ronaldo comes from there, so people are starting to realize that and many events on YouTube, what Madeira stands for. The celebration of the independence of the United States was actually celebrated with Madeira wine.
Oh,
Hmm. Yeah. So the fight. Sorry for digression there, but in 1969, Cookies participates in a racing with his now all decked out Cooper S. I mean, as he stated, this was the little devil. This was no comparison to the cars came from the factory. He said the idling speed was anywhere. He could not take off from a stand stop unless at 2,500 RPM. And this thing would go from the short straights from turn to turn would achieve easily 90 kilometers an hour. I'm sorry, 90 miles an hour. Top speed of this car, as he tested in Girona, was about 125 miles an hour on this
wow.
car. Yes, and this was back in the day. So um, he participated in a few more racing events, but significant part here, and I shared with you, there was a gentleman by the name of American Nunes. American Nunes was among many rally drivers, but this gentleman is known as the Porsche man. He basically participated with 911 S's. He eventually went and ordered a brand new Porsche 911. And so the story goes that there was some delays on the delivery, and he even contemplated buying a Lotus and other cars. And he goes um, to contact the factory about it, and they said, "Yeah, your car is ready." And so he goes to Germany to pick up this car. And when he gets there, the car is different than what he expected. So imagine this. It's not a 911S. It's not a 911R, but it's the ultimate 911 STR in green with, you know, all the works specified basically, unfortunately, to circuit racing, not rally racing. But this car is all decked out. One of probably Felipe, what would you say? What did our brother say? 5 or 6 made?
Yeah, there was five made. It was a 911 ST in green.
Hmm.
I had magnesium crankcase, engine crankcase. It had a triple choke Weber DCO, Weber carburetors, not DCOE, but the triple choke
The
factory
IDAs. Yeah.
IDAs. Had a five speed gearbox, limited slip. Had disc brakes all the way around. Lightweight body, aluminum doors, lightweight hood and trunk lid, um, twin plug. But I think one of the peculiarities about the car that my brother remembered vividly, because by then he was a lot younger, and so more impressful to see the green giant coming and the Cooper right behind it. The crankshaft on that Porsche was made by Mali. Mali made pistons, but they made the crankshaft. Now the peculiarity about that crankshaft, it was made out of titanium crankshaft for that particular engine, and so there were only five made with that. In fact, they broke the crankshaft in 1970, and the replacement cost then was $10,000 for the crankshaft alone.
Ooh,
Hmm.
ooh, wee.
So
Yikes.
So that's the league the Cooper was competing with.
yes. So Mike, additionally, this car was had straight pipes, and it had the three IDFs on either side. It was called the Green Bomb because you would hear this thing for miles, roaring and echoing through the mountainside, and it was just unbelievable. So American Nunes, and I shared with you the other day. I don't think I should go into it today, but anyhow, so this American Nunes and his Porsche, um, you know, the Cooper S and American Nunes with his Porsche, they were really the direct competitors. So apparently the Porsche had approximately 300 horsepower, and our car had 125. So in the hands of Cookie, especially in the rain, he was always ahead of the Porsche. So Cookies was in 1960s the most significant rally driver, and this Cooper S. It was the one that got the most accolades, the most recognition, and it stayed in people's minds even after he was sold over or and passed on to other hands. This Morris Cooper S held a lot of rich memories and events that occurred throughout the island.
To say that we are incredibly honored to have this car, have stayed in the family, and have made the journey to Portugal to go and put it in a container and bring it back, and get it to where it should be. It's quite humbling, but I'm grateful that we have such a support of a great community. Marco has been, unrestful in trying to get parts that the car needs. And Mike, again, thank you for the opportunity. I think that the minis in itself is a special group, but minis that have, a certain pedigree, even more so.
I agree. There's a mini for everybody, and personally, I think race cars are the coolest. My Cooper S has some race history as well. I'm trying to dig it up, and it's very difficult. But this is cool that you literally have books, documents, papers that have your mini on it. The cool pictures, and I'll post in the show notes your Instagram and Facebook so everyone can kind of jump on there and look, because you have some awesome documents showing this. So
Mhm.
this is like 1970. Cookies is still racing. Wasn't there another iteration of your Mini that
Yes.
it went through,
So
like a Group 5 or something like that?
yeah. So Cookies was a forward man and ahead of his time in terms of thinking, engineering, driving. And so the car, as it was sold over to, passed hands to his godson for a short period of time, Fui to unfortunately, our records indicate that it has had only two owners prior to my brother, late brother Ilidio Correia. So the car, when it was sold, and Charles Frederick, aka Stefan, aka Stefan, I'll mention him as Stefan forward, got the car ready as a Group 5. So it's in the Group 5 spec. That's when it had the racing bucket seats, pads on the doors. It had Group 5 arches. It had indeed had some more modifications to the body and to the engine. One fun fact was weight savings. So, without getting ahead of myself a little bit, which I'll get into in a little while, but they removed the license plate brackets and the license plates. So there were decals. They were painted on the front, and the rear was a decal. Um, and then you acquired the bucket seats at that point in time when it was converted to Group 5. It acquired probably a special tuning, 1 3/4 dual SU carbs. It did acquire some German parts, contrary to the purists. I do apologize. It did not use, no, Mike, it did not use, it did not use the Lucas. I can tell you the coil is a Bosch. I can tell you that, the fuel pump was Harding or from another manufacturer, and it was really for reliability. Um, so I wanted to share with you that when Stefan bought the car, in the 70s, beginning of 70s. He actually participated in this famous Madeira Island rally with it, and then he raced locally until 1976 or so. Um, and I do have something here. So I asked my brother yesterday. I don't know if you can see it, Mike. This is the original. Um, This is the original document for the car, and you can see it's been taped, but you can see here all the information, and you can see that it's in March of '67 was sold. Is the information. We also have this another piece of document that is entrusted to my late brother, and you could see here it's all documented, and you could see underneath the tag or this mark here two. That means two owners prior to him. So we have all the information since day one. We also, in historical significance, we did go through I have some notes here, but you can see the car had all the options. It had a heater, the wheels, it had the dual tanks, it has all the information here. Sorry, my apologies. This is from, this way. From Heritage, we have all the information. So I really would like to take a little moment here to thank Stefan and Daniel. I mean, they love this car dearly. They are, we have such a great friendship now. They're really incredibly happy that we have the vehicle, that we are the custodians of the vehicle. They were afraid that this historical piece of machinery would be lost. And to hear from Daniel himself that Filipe and I can do a better restoration than he could ever do or able of doing, or hearing from Stefan that, this car really is like a phoenix, is going to be retiring in great honor. And, Stefan, so the history of Stefan and his family is quite important as well, not lesser than the original owner. So Stefan's family heritage is from Scotland and Great Britain. So his father was a whiskey representative in Madeira Island. They live in this estate in this manor, this big home that actually has been converted to a hotel. That's how big it is, right? With gardens and so forth. So Stefan used to work for a BMC and British Leyland dealer, a prominent dealer there that still probably exists. And they also represented Ford and other brands. It was called Leacock. And so Stefan, being a shop manager at that location, he was very in tune with the cars, the significant cars and all cars in general, but he also took frequent trips to UK, where on one of these trips, he got smitten by the mini bug, I call it, right? He goes to the factory, to BMC, he walks the special tuning. I mean, he knew these guys like they were friends. So a lot of the development that happened on the Cooper S since his purchase was by going directly to UK and getting items from there. Um, Stefan has currently a 998 Austin Cooper. He has had all the significant Cooper and Cooper S's that we can think about, the 1070s. So through this technical research, and again, I'm incredibly humbled by his help. He has given us the technical details, and we've managed to ignite his 10-year plus Austin Cooper restoration, nickname Blue Angel. So Stefan and I chat occasionally, not as frequently as we would like to, but he's been incredibly helpful, not only with the details, uh, getting us parts, or donating. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I will say it. Mike, I have an NOS Speedwell valve cover plate that he's donated to me. And so, as a token of appreciation, yeah, and you know how hard those are to come by, right?
Of course.
Um, and so, as a token of appreciation and to no one's knowledge, I did donate to him for Christmas a Wilmot Breeden NOS fuel gas cap, lockable fuel gas cap for him to put on his Blue Angel. And
Wow.
he sends me a photo, says it fits perfectly. So, you know,
So
um,
I think Stefan raced the car, what, 1980?
no,
What?
he raced from 70 to 76. So, and he probably may have done a few other events. Stefan was, the story goes that he eventually got or stopped racing, Mike, and that's when my brother got to Cooper S. Is in 1981. I have the story and I asked Stefan as to how he acquired the vehicle. So Stefan was living in this manor house, and he was going to get married, and he promised his bride that he was going to stop racing. So the Cooper S, gets parked, um, and there's wind in the island of the Cooper S being for sale. And apparently, my brother shows up in 1981 on his driveway in his yellow Spitfire with widened wheels and a few other tweaks. And Stefan hears this car, in the driveway. So he comes to the terrace and looks down. He says, "There's my friend Ilidio Correia over there next to his Spitfire." And I asked him to come up for a drink. He says, "No, no, no. I'm not going to go up for a drink." And he says, "I hear that you're selling the Cooper S. Is that true?" He
I'm
goes,
here for
"Yes."
more important business.
Exactly. So he says, "I hear that you're selling the Cooper S. Is that true?" And he goes, "Yes, it's true." He says, "Well, you got to sell it to me. I'm ready to buy it." So Stefan goes downstairs and he says, "What's the price?" And Stefan says to him, "Well, the price is 90,000 skrudus, which was the currency back then." It was a significant amount of money, by the way. And so my brother looks at him and says, he comes close to him. This is the spirit of my brother. Says, like, as if somebody was listening to their conversation, says, "Hey, I'm ready to buy it." He reaches out to his pocket and there's an envelope with the money. And he gives it over to Stefan, and Stefan is taken back a little bit, like, "Wait." And he goes, "I'll have that drink now." So
So that
that
amount
was,
of money at that time was a lot. What's comparable
yes.
to like US dollars or pounds or something like that, euros?
I don't know for sure. I've tried to do this research, Mike. It's kind of difficult,
Kind of different.
but
Okay. It wasn't like
yeah,
a cheap car. We'll say that.
no,
No,
So he
no,
just
by
had
no
it in his
means.
pocket and said, "All right, here you go." It was kind of that
no.
guy's way of saying, "This is the price that I'll put on it because I don't want to sell it, but if somebody has that, they'll take it."
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and there was a few other parts. Stefan is really a great person, but he says even today, thinking about that story, I chuckle how pure how pure it was. So he says, "Okay, now I'll have that drink." So they had a drink. He comes down and says, "Does the car run?" He goes, "Sure it runs." He says, "One of the wet suspension and stuff is like kind of, or one of the suspension, there's an issue with the suspension, but the car runs." He says, "We start up the Cooper S, and the roaring of that engine said it all." Your brother was like, "Hey, I love this car." He goes, "I'm going to drive it home. Can you follow me? And then I'll drive you back." And that's really how the Cooper S got into the family, right?
Wow.
That's how my brother got in 1981. Um,
Wow.
he That's how he got in 1981. Now, we were too little to remember, but my brother in 1981, he was already working on rally cars. So Ari Vatanen went to the Madeira Island Rally in 1979 along with other prominent, rally drivers. I think it's worth mentioning. I think this is the first time, at least documented, that my brother is working on Ford Escorts MK2s, RS2000s. This one owned by Emmanuel Pereira, who was a rally driver at the time. He still participates in vintage racing. I think that was the first official time that my brother built an engine for a rally car. So, during this historical searching of information, I did speak with Emmanuel Pereira, again, another pilot that we became friends with, and he vividly said, "Oh yeah, I remember being in that Cooper S in such and such road, and boy, that thing moved." So, and this was in the early '80s. So
And
this
where
was
was this
in,
again? I might have missed that part.
so this is in Madeira Island
Okay, I
after
was
my
gonna say it's
brother.
still Madeira.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah. The car never left the island.
gotcha.
This is the first time that it leaves, and it comes to the, except for the racing that he went to,
Okay,
the
that's
car
what I was gonna
always was
say.
in Madeira.
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was gonna say I know it left for racing, but okay, it was still owned in Madeira. Okay, awesome.
oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. My brother had that car, as Marco mentioned. He bought it in the early '80s, and I guess then life got in the way. But that Mini, on the road, it had just such a presence, not only from the sound and the smell that it made, but how it drove. Um, so my brother drove it for a few years, and then he got uh, a Peugeot 205 GTI, which is the hatchback, uh, the hot hatchback in Europe, kind of like the VW GTI. It was the direct competitor.
Right.
My brother got an '84 205 GTI, and at that time he was also preparing in the Skunk Works. Nobody knew about it. He was preparing a 205 GTI for the rally, for Madeira rally. Um, the car that my brother had, which he had bought secondhand, that's how pricey cars were in the island. He proceeded to prepare that whole car for Group A spec, lower suspension, different wheels, exhaust, header. Built the engine from 1600 to 1900 cc, closed gear ratio, Piper cam, ECU. I mean, he built Coney shocks that he modified because they had long stroke to put in the car, and the car was really really fast. In fact, I remember, and this all comes to the surface when I go back to pick up the Mini, and the friends, the close knit friends that we have. I said, "So what are you guys doing with the GTI, the 205?" I said, "Are we taking it as well?" He goes, "You know that GTI. I'm gonna tell you what happened. I got in that GTI with your brother, and we drove. We were providing technical assistance for whatever car we had in the rally, and we got in that car, and that was the best ride in my life. When your brother got to the top of the mountain with that car, he got out of the car, and the people thought it was a rally car itself. And your brother turned away, all calmly said, 'It's just a street car.'"
Yeah.
Um,
So,
one of the competitors that my brother was not providing any support for building engines happened to have a similar car and blew his engine in one of the stages. My brother plucked out the engine out of his street car and put it in the race car, and he went to win that stage. That car stayed. My brother stayed without an engine for months because once the competitors saw how good that engine was, he didn't want to give it back.
uh, I think, Mike, this kind of leads to, and I'm gonna try not choke up here, the incredible person he was.
Hmm.
Talented, giving, caring, a genius, mechanical genius. I mean, I'm looking through his books. I probably have 6 or 7 containers of waterproof containers full of books and technical information, some of which I will show you in a bit. But this gentleman was a self-taught. He called himself a mechanic, but the who's who of racing in Europe and rallying, my brother knew them firsthand. He would go to he could go to Ford Diego League and talk with the guys at Pro Drive, talk to the guys at Ford Motorsport on a first basis, first name conversation. I'll just give you. I think this story will tell you the type of person he was, not only from a technical perspective, Mike, but also as a human being. So there's a gentleman in the island that they got this kind of ongoing yearly friendly competition. And when I heard this, I was blown away. So it's not a friendly competition in the sense of the word of cars or whatever, but building kites. So my brother and him, on a yearly basis, would build a kite and see who won, who would fly better, who was the better built kite. So every year, my brother would build a kite. Um, when he would go and meet with the other gentleman, he told my brother Philippe while he was visiting the island to collect the cards and the tools and so forth. He says, your brother built these kites. And he could easily balance them on a pointer. Any finger you want on your hand, the kite was perfectly balanced. So one day, he's about to get into this competition with his friend. He's getting out of his house. Um, and a kid was walking by and is baffled by this kite. The kite was absolutely stunning. I mean, the kid is there for a while and he's talking with my brother. My brother was the type of person that you will see what I mean by he really cared about people, you know. So he spends months building this kite. He balancing the pieces of wood, the flexibility. He's telling me. I mean, he didn't use. You could if you were you and me, I would go buy the best kite and let's fly it. Well, that's not him. So he balances the pieces of wood, the right strain, whatever, the right design. He doesn't. The design is perfect. Everything is balanced. The kid is baffled by this kite. My brother turns around and gives the kite to the kid as a gift. So he goes and sees his friend. He's like, hey, where's your kite? And he tells the story. I built the kite. It was like perfectly balanced again. It was this, da, 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 da. The kid is walking by and I'm talking to the kid and his eyes must have been like, like glaring, like, wow. And I gave it to the kid. So I can't compete this year. So that's the type of a story of a man he was, right? So in reading his notes, he was self-taught mechanic, but way above and beyond that. This is a gentleman in the 80s that he was already corner balancing cars. He was basically already giving the instructions to the drivers on hydration, things of that nature. I
It's
mean,
interesting too because it's a small island.
yes,
It's not the UK or Spain like all these other
No,
countries that
no.
they raced in. It's like he had to be engineer it himself and figure it out. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said before, they were doing leaf springs for protection on the underbottom and stuff like that. That's really interesting and really cool. He seems like he was kind of the unsung hero, and there's a lot of big names out there and all sorts of racing communities, but those are the guys that are actually getting it done and passing on the information because they're not trying to hold it in for themselves, like the kite story,
Right,
right?
right.
yeah, yeah.
He's not
And
trying to
he had
hoard it.
one, and he
No,
had,
I'm right. You're absolutely right. I think that's what's even more poignant, right? It's a small island. He didn't have his own shop, but this all come. I come to learn all about this from friends and whatnot after his passing because I never knew. Ford from UK came to compete in the island one year with a factory prepped car. If I'm not mistaken, it was a Sierra Cosworth, which was a very competitive car. And they were testing the car before the race, and the car would not perform. They were constantly having problems and whatnot. And so, someone in the island tells them, "Listen, you need to talk to Ilidio Correia." What? You need to talk to Ilidio Correia. So they find him. They said, "Where is his shop?" And they keep telling him, "Go to the hotel." My brother was worked in the hotel. Go to the hotel. No, no. Where's his shop? Go to the hotel. So they go to the hotel, talk to him. He said, "You know what? Meet me in so and so place at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll leave at midnight. I go home. I'll pick up my tools. Meet me in so and so place at 3 o'clock in the morning." Sure enough, they meet him up. My brother goes with them, tests the car, opens up the hood, does the adjustments. Da da da. The guy goes test the car. He said, "What the hell did you do?" He goes, "You had this, this, and this, and this that wasn't working properly," and they couldn't believe it. From then on, they will always come to the island and make sure to talk to Ilidio Correa, just even as a friend. And I saw it myself. I went to the island in 2003,
20.
perhaps.
Oh,
20 I went, but I went another year, 2011, if I'm not mistaken. And they were competing. They were competing, but the one team that was doing well was the Fiat team because they had a factory race car in there. I'll never forget. So we go into the technical paddock, and these cars are racing down for the technical inspection. And all of a sudden, we get into the Fiat paddock and we can't get in because it's closed quarters. The technical director, Giovanni, I'll never forget, comes out, grabs my brother and me and go, come and check the cars. Oh, what the heck? So we there, and I'm just like so appalled. I couldn't believe I was doing that. I mean, these cars are like factory backed, coming out of Milan and Italy. What the hell? So we get done. My brother's talking to him. They give themselves a hug and go by and then back and whatnot, and we leave. And I said, Mano, what was that all about? He said, you see, Giovanni had a heart attack just like me, and since then we've become very good friends. He calls me every single year to wish me a happy birthday, and I do the same to him. Those are the kind of relationships he had.
Wow.
The gentleman from ProDrive, if you're familiar with Subarus and whatnot, ProDrive, my brother used to call them and used to get gear sets. They were custom made. He could not get it off the catalog. They were custom made gear sets that he would build onto the race cars. So when he started with this Peugeot 205, the Mini was put aside. The Mini was put aside, and the Mini was not forgotten, but the Mini was supposed to be taken apart to be painted. That's what happened to the Mini. And it stayed in there for the ravages of time. It got moved between a few of the shops and so on and so on. But my brother never gave up on the Mini. But life kept going, and it was a dream he always wanted to put the Mini back on the road. When he passed, we got the Mini. But his accomplishments throughout his time were commendable. When he built the Peugeot 205, which was probably where I got to see him and had fun because then we immigrated. But the Peugeot that he built is still till today, 20 years later, in front of the pack. The car got sold to the mainland. And the gentleman who drives Porsches and everything, he said, I never forgot that car that your brother built me. I went back, I bought the car, and he came back to the island and we restored the car, and the car is still competitive with things that my brother built. They were custom-made cams from Strick and all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Incredible.
So the Mini, yeah, that is.
So I think it was worth noting a few friends that we will do so at the end, Mike. But I hope you don't mind. Do you want me to raise a few of the books that I have collected out of these 30-something?
Yeah, you can raise a couple of them. For those that are watching, he has a ton of documents. He'll show them on screen a little bit, explain a few of them, and then since it's a lot of people do just listen, we'll kind of go through this. But we'll send me some pictures too, and I can post them on Instagram so people can see them there as well.
Sure. So the first one I have here, Mike, is a work book for the car, and basically it's about advanced race car suspension and development. This is probably, I would say, 60s or 70s. This particular book is a paperback. It has all the formulas, a lot of formulas. It was written in the U.S. This is a 75. Another book that I wanted to show in his notings and markings. Mike, you're gonna get a little bit of a impressed with this. This is the diagrams that my brother would do for the rally cars and the corner balancing and the spring rates and shocks.
This is amazing.
And so forth, right? And this is one of probably, I don't know, 10, 15 books. Let me just go through a few pages to tell you, because the other day I was telling you how many cars he did in the island. So this is one, right?
So he's showing this book, and it has all of these handwritten notes from your brother of corner balancing, notes, formulas, diagrams, etc.
Yeah, it goes on and on of the rally cars, the team, the settings of the engine, the rates of the suspension. I mean, he gives you everything and everything to those that know. He knew, because at times he actually wrote the notes, and that's an interesting story. He would write the notes, but he would write it in a decipher, in a manner that somebody would get their hands on, they wouldn't know what it is. He basically would have it encoded, and that's the smartness, right? This is something that, here's another one. And then you don't know. You look at these things, and you're like, how do you read the spring rate over there, the shock absorbing the dimensions? This is legible, but I know that at times you even put to the car that they belong, because if somebody would get the book, they thought it was for a specific car, and it's not. So this is another one.
Trickery of racing.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Mike, this is another book, and I'm pretty sure that people have seen this. This is John Bassini. This is Weber Carburetors. This is Theory. This is a rare book. Okay. It's an orange cover, right? And I think I'm going to get a little bit into the kick of the technical ability that you will look into. So this book here is a scientific design of exhaust and intake systems, the third edition. I don't know. This is probably in the 70s as well. Here it is, Mike. Uh, so this is like really technical stuff, right? I'll give you another one.
And all of these came with your car? This is all
Yes.
stuff that was basically
Yeah.
Part of his library.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is competition car suspensions. There's Formula Ones. There's design. Everything, tuning. This is one of many. So in his spare time, he also did education on practical gas flow of cylinder heads and what happens with the fuel. Um, I will just leave one more, and then we'll talk about a story that kind of drives that home. So, Mike, in getting into Mini Cooper S's and Minis, I donated a book to him, only to be brought back, and I'm so grateful for it. Again, this wouldn't be possible without our family, our friends. But here it is. Look, still in the cover, and it will remain in covered, hardcover, right? And still wrapped from his library. Original Mini Cooper S. And this is the book that usually,
Yeah, John Parnell. If you guys are Cooper or Cooper S enthusiasts, the John Parnell original Mini Cooper and Cooper S, excuse me, book. I have mine actually sitting right here next to me, next to the Yellow Bible as well, and a couple other mini magazines, and of course my work notes and stuff like that. Of course, but
Of course, the work notes are the most notes you have. Not.
So, about the tuning, Mike, and I think that was quite interesting. There's a story about one of these Mitsubishi Lancer Evolutions. He reaches to a gentleman in UK that does tuning of ECUs, and my brother's talking to him about the microclimates and grades or elevation, quick elevations in Madeira changes, and how he needs to tune the car in a different way. And this gentleman on the line says, absolutely not. The tune is absolute perfect. He goes, okay, when you get over here, we're gonna go for a ride, and we'll talk about the tuning. So it so goes. I may be butchering the story a little bit here. I don't know all the details, but the point is this: the gentleman was taken back how quickly the elevation changes in Madeira when you're in a rally stage. Needless to say, the car had to be completely retuned. And he says, Ilidio, if you didn't tell me about this, I would never believe it. And he was like, and my brother's telling him, like, this is the barometric pressure over here, this is here. And it's like the elevation is this in so much period of time. This is how many seconds go by, and the guy's like, wow. Says, I would never believe it. So the cars had to be custom tuned. And my brother was really at the forefront when it came to that. But just as a whole, as a whole engineer of a car setup, and I know in the few times that we visited with him, he was the type of person that really make you at peace, right? He was very silent, but very observant. There was nothing that would go past by him. It runs in the family. We're very detail oriented, as you could tell. But I remember spending time with him and him telling us that he had many job offers throughout Europe for these fancy and eloquent rally events or shops, and he didn't take it. But in Europe, once they got to know him, I mean, you should see the faxes that would come to him at all times. He was Portuguese, obviously, learned to speak English, French, German, and write. And I only knew this after he's passing, unfortunately, and looking at his technical notes. Only because, Mike, the other day, a gentleman of ours that provides his parts from Portugal, he has this little car, and I remember like a picture of it in one of the books. It so happens to be written in French, and is a very limited edition. The book is 200 euros, Mike. I have one. Yes. I don't even know if I brought it here. And I'm like, hey, I have that book. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, yeah, it tells you how to do the body changes, the suspension, this, that, whatever. All the special parts. He says, you do? I'm like, yeah, my brother had that book.
That
Sure
Porsche
enough,
tax.
200. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he was, to paint a picture of what he was able to do, and I'm sure that he was reserving that to do for his mini as well. He basically will come with a body shell, and he'll build you a race car, and he would know how to build the suspension. He would set up and build the differentials, the gearbox, the engine, everything. So there was nothing that you could have. There was nothing that you need when you come out of there. He wouldn't even do the alignment for you, depending if you want the rear loose or tight, and he did all that. So it was definitely multifaceted in being able to put the car together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One story that I come to learn about, and I think that probably is just as an example of his ability, and I'm sure on what he ultimately envisioned doing with the Cooper. They have in Portugal, they had a European Cup for Citroën. And there was this famous company in France that sold the kits to upgrade the car. And these were bench tested kits. And they know stage one kit gives you, say 160 horse, stage two kit gives you 190, and so on and so on. So this gentleman, who is Ricardo Ramos, he has his own shop, and that's a place where my brother used to build engines and transmissions and locking differentials and all these things. He says, I had Citroën at the time, and my crew chief was building the car and whatnot, and I broke 8 engines in that season. He said, so I was on my eighth engine, and finally somebody says, why don't you go and talk to Ilidio Correia? Who? Ilidio Correia. Believe me, he'll build you the car the way you want it. So he goes to my brother, and my brother says, look, I'm currently tied up with a car that I'm doing, and I would have to leave that team to be able to join you and build you the car. So this season, let's not do it official. I'll build you the car, and let's see where you go. But tell me, who's building your engine? Where do you stand? He says, look, I just broke my eighth engine this season, and I'm currently have the ninth engine in the car. I'll let you know Saturday how it goes because it's the race. Sure enough, Ricardo gets on the car, boom, breaks the engine, I think, third stage or whatever it was. So he calls my brother. He said, I'll tell you what, we'll build you an engine, but it has to be for the next season. So sure enough, Ricardo orders another, short block from whatever. My brother builds him the engine. He said, for you to be competitive, there's only number one and there's nobody else. So you have to build an engine with the best of the parts. You cannot expect the engine to last if you don't put the money into it and whatnot. So sure enough, how much is it? My brother says it's X. You got to buy these, and these. Sure enough, he buys the parts, comes from France all the way to the island. He builds the engine, and my brother says to him, "Look, the engine with these parts are and the dyno are rated for 180 horse. This is the most that can get out of this, but you'll be competitive in your class. But to determine if we have done a good job, we should really take the engine to the stand again and make sure everything is good." He goes, "Well, there's no engine, there's no dyno in Madeira, there's no dyno in the mainland. The dyno is back in France. How much is it? How much is it to ship the engine and get it done?" He goes, "It's 10,000 euros to get the engine shipped and to the bench and back." Oh wow. Okay, you know what? Give me until tomorrow. The story goes that Ricardo ships the engine from the island to the mainland. A friend of his puts it in the back of a pickup and drives all the way from mainland Portugal through Spain to France to where this engine builder who had sold the parts had the dyno. So he tests the engine and he calls my brother. He goes, uh, you know, this engine did well, but you don't have the standard kit one in here because you got 184 horse out of this engine. My brother goes to him, if I don't have the standard kit, it's because he sold me the upgraded parts. He goes, no, No, he can't be. He says, well, then whatever you sold me, that's what I built. And yeah, I got 184 horse, right? He goes, yep. Sends the engine back. He calls Ricardo. He goes, Ricardo, the engine got to the bench. And I got to tell you, it didn't go well. They broke the engine. And Ricardo is about to like start crying. He goes, no, it didn't. It made 184 horse. He goes, but it was 180. He tells me that it made 184. So that's what we're going to race. Hand built in the island. That's what it did. It outperformed a factory built car or factory built engine from some renowned people, and he did it with his own hands. That's how he puts all that he had learned into practice.
He took pride in his work.
Yeah,
He did, and he was very humble, very reserved. He
It's
didn't
good. It's a
advertise.
good lesson to a lot of. I
Yeah, he didn't say much, but I think it spoke. The results spoke for themselves.
He just let his engine speak for himself. I want to
correct.
get into guys a little bit of. I want to get into a little bit of like what is your plans for restoring it? I know you, like I said earlier in the podcast, Marco's the new old stock king. He's been collecting parts for a long time, I think, for this. Are you trying to bring it back to a certain spec? Are you trying to do
Hmm.
a complete like nut and bolt restoration? What's your plans for it?
So, my brother and I complement each other. We're identical twins, where I can have probably a little bit of fair advantage on details and certain peculiarities of the car. He excels. He's an electrical engineer, professional engineer. I'm mechanical, so we both complement each other. He plays in that field, but we both basically mechanically capable. The idea, Mike, is to rebuild the car to be even better than new. Better than new from a perspective of not in both restoration, to be respectful of its history. Hence, certain items will not be as fresh new because as part of its racing conversion and evolution, it had these parts installed. Um, so what we've been doing, the whole process kind of started, Mike, and I got to mention a gentleman here and many others, but I will mention a few names that they were my brother's friends and great respect for him, and we have great respect for them. To me, they were idols, particularly Stefan, Vasco Silva with his 205 GTI, Ricardo Franco, Vasquinho, which is Vasco Silva's son, Guilherme Mimoso, I mean, Elvio Lumas, and many others. My brother probably will mention a few names. I am not leaving
Agus Loomis.
anyone right. I will not leave anybody out of this. But so the story is when we got the car, it was incredibly mentally, physically, and emotionally distressful for us. Imagine we had to fly, my brother had to fly to Madeira to collect 40-year plus collection of parts, books. My brother even made custom parts. I will show you this. So this is half of the draft shaft with a nut and a socket welded onto it. And this itself, my brother used for setting up the tension on the differentials, the LSDs. So this is a homemade tool,
Wow.
right? Right. This is one. I have another one here, and a couple of them. You probably have seen this, Mike, probably when they do the commercial grade versions. But here's a homemade tool with aluminum wheels on, with a pointer. This is for the tension on the belt, and basically, as it turns, it tells you how many degrees you've done it. This is a homemade tool, right? This is
Yep.
a tool.
And he used to torque the head bolt to that as well.
Right. There's
But
another one here. Hold on, please, 1 second. There's another one here, Mike. This is quite interesting. So my brother invested a lot of money in his tools, but the tools that he had were Ferrari grade tools. The same tools that Ferrari uses, that's what he used. Here are two tools, Mike. They look exactly the same, right? This is to adjust the shock absorbers. Well, I can tell you that if you look at the mark here, there's a 5-con mark here. This is an official tool. This is another,
Stockholm. Yep.
yeah. This is another one that is a name brand. Hey, both feel different. Why would he have this and then have this? Well, this is much lighter. If you were to feel this, it's almost half the weight as this one. So imagine now you're on a racetrack and you're setting up, or a rally stage, setting up the shock absorbers. Which one would cause less strain, right?
You thought
There's
of
many.
everything.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I have another one here, and I'll finish with this. But I think I told you I would do a little show and tell. So my brother was saying that he would do custom tools. This is a stainless steel T handle, right? Welded onto an ARP bolt here, right? Welded by his friend, probably Elvin Looms. And he would
He
set it
was.
up on the cylinder head and whatever, and he would set it up, done. Next. That's what he would do, right? To build engines. Um,
So the dream for the Mini, um, the dream to the Mini is to bring it back to its racing spec. We're not going to do a factory restoration because the history of the car would, I think, be erased to an extent if we bring it back to any other Cooper S.
I agree.
Um, so we are still debating whether we're going to bring it into the last iteration with the Group 5 or the Group 2 spec. I think it would be helpful to mention why this has been so much of a tumultuous effort. The car was put away to get painted, and during that 40-year hibernation, many of its parts got lost or stolen. And so we basically got the shell with, thankfully and gratefully, the original transmission, the original engine, the original glass, the original mini light wheels, and the cosmic wheels and suspensions, the bucket seats, steering column, and speedometer. That's basically what we got. Um, so now we are on this quest to get all the parts back, to put the car back, in the very least, to a Cooper S spec. So then we kind of understand what do we need to restore and bring it back to the street. So first is getting all the parts to make a complete vehicle, go apart, restore it, and put it back. We will keep the straight gear box. We will keep the original 1380cc engine. We just procured an original Cooper S radiator. We've gotten a pair of Salve Marshall Amplilux headlights back, and some other parts. But we found through this journey that it's very difficult to find original parts. And maybe the people that do have them at times don't want to sell them. I must say that Seven Enterprises have been helpful. A gentleman out in Washington State was able to source us a brake booster, an original brake booster. Mini Parts, DJ Mini Parts in Florida was able to get us the I wouldn't say the headliner frames that was missing. We drove to upstate New York to go get the right hand tank that had been stolen as well. So we got the tank now.
Trevor
And
Rogers from Trevor Rogers and Mike. I'm sorry. We will make a little mention of a few people here. I think this is fitting right at this moment. So we've been traveling, at least digitally, all over the world, my friend. I'm sorry, Felipe. 1 second. So we've been traveling all over the world for parts. We've been in UK, Portugal. We've been Netherlands, Germany, US, England. So a few names have come to play here. Nick Rogers, obviously, for those that are familiar with minis, right? Jonathan Clapp, who I bought the speedometer and gauges from, we became good friends. He's like my uh, Santa Claus in July. He basically gets all the packages, rightfully so, and appreciated. He puts it in his home and sends it to us. Mark Steffen, who has like some incredibly good and rare parts. I mean, to the point that I buy the original BMC decal, so it goes on the Cooper S that was fitted to the rally cars. Nigel and Kim Brazier, I apologize if I misspell the names or mispronounce the names. I've got a significant amount of replica parts and parts for the Cooper S that were fitted in the worst cars for our car. Andy Barras, where we got the racing harnesses from, right? Um, Ed with ADO equipment. Frank Phillips, who actually has worked on many vehicles. We got some badging and a few things from him. Kevin Kidman, he's my go-to bud with a lot of Mini Coopers, and I just want to be clear for people that are listening to us that we do look for NOS parts, original parts, some of which we're still looking. We don't have I mean, there's more parts than money, obviously. And some of these people have been graciously so on a word to mouth gentleman's agreement that when we cannot buy the parts outright, we'll make a few payments on the parts and so forth and get them. I mean, Mike, you know that how expensive these could be, particularly NOS. If I tell you some prices of some of the items, they will look back and say, "You paid what?" But to me, that is what this car means, right? And knowing my brother how he worked on these things, he only did the best. So now we're doing the best for him. Um,
I
in
agree. I
Portugal,
think that's the only way that car should be restored.
right?
It's going to be a showstopper for sure. And
Yes.
whether it's Group 2, Group 5, I think it's going to turn out amazing. To see it back in race trim, fully restored, ready to rock and roll again is going to be awesome. I can't wait to see it for sure.
If you
I
don't
don't
mind,
know if the neighbors are going to be appreciative of the exhaust
They'll
note.
get over
yeah.
it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I hope you don't mind if I shout out for a few more people here.
Go for it.
So Mário Fernandes, Pedro Carvalho, Fernando Madeira, which is a gentleman that Make Me Works, and who restored our original speedometer, and who has done the speedometer replica that I got from Jonathan Clapp. Rui Abreu, who has himself a significant amount of KAD minis, and I mean, I don't speak with him frequently, but the good story is this gentleman has a business of restoring high-end Aston Martins and Bentleys in terms of bodywork and painting. I call him the modern day Ferrari. He basically makes his living to buy minis, and he jokingly says, "Yeah, you're correct." So, in one of our purchases of these Speedwell harnesses, or actually, may I stand corrected, the Speedwell harnesses or harnesses sold through Speedwell were obviously, Andy had them, and Rui Abreu, whom I will never forget. I never met this gentleman. He lives in mainland, is from Madeira. He forwarded the money to make this purchase happen. I mean, my brother Filipe, thank you so much, and we have it in Madeira. So again, I mentioned a few names that I don't mean to leave anyone out, but Stefan for sure, Daniel, Stefan's son, Ricardo Franco, Vasco Silva, Vasco San Vasquinho, Mimoso, Elvio Luma, Egas Luma, um, Carlos Alberto Freitas, obviously my family, my sister-in-law, Tanya and Sarah, who are my beautiful nieces and my late brother's daughters. I mean, without them, particularly when it came to the Peugeot, this would never happen. We would never have the car back. I won't disclose many of the details, but I can tell you there was having that call with whom somebody I did not know, such as Vasco, and become a good friend. I mean, this gentleman had already the car in his possession. He says, "You could have it. You are the only person that this car would go to, other than keeping it in my household." And my brother Philippe, we managed to do it.
I love it. It's awesome. This story is super cool, and I know I've talked to you about it for about, like I said, a year, and I think it's just an incredible story. The lineage that your car went through, the people behind it, and all the people that you named. This isn't just hey, I'm gonna pay somebody to build this car. This takes a lot of people to find the records, and I think it deserves that, and you guys deserve
Yeah.
that, and I appreciate you guys jumping on here, sharing the story. That was incredible. How about we
Mm-hmm.
end it with a little Patty Probe questions? How about
Sure.
that? I don't know,
Sure.
Philippe. Have you listened to the podcast? Do you know what the Patty Probe is?
No, but I'm willing to take place in it. Go ahead.
All right, I have some questions here. We can either rapid fire, you can elaborate a little bit. They're just fun little questions about minis.
Sure.
I think we might know this answer, but what is your favorite mini variant?
Huh.
Of course, the Cooper S for me it is that.
That's an easy one.
I think Mike is the one that runs and doesn't leak, but that doesn't happen.
That's a good answer. Um, how many minis do you currently own, and how many have you owned? Is that your only mini?
Yes, that is the only and only Mini that we have owned. We own several vehicles, obviously. We love cars. My brother at times, Philippe, gets it, tells me I get too excited, but I just love cars in general. He has quite a few Triumph TR6s and MGBs. I have a few MGBs. I have also uh, Porsche 944 Turbo and a few other things. So I enjoy cars as a general, but minis, this is the only one. I guess it's that British kind of classy look that really captivates me. And
Yeah,
simplicity, by the way, Mike, right? It's the
yeah,
simplicity of it.
it's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's a interesting one. I usually ask what's your favorite modification, but when it comes to your car, what's the favorite maybe modification your brother did, or one of these new old stock parts that you're really excited about putting on?
Hmm. That is going to be. I will take this and then I'll let Philippe get in. But there's a few gentlemen in France. Well, one I forgot to mention, but Toby Sieb has been incredible in terms of getting the technical know-how of the cars. I mean, minis and so forth. But I have a few good friends in France. Charles, my friend, mon ami, apologies if I misspell your last name, Russelin, Frank, there's two Franks, one of which I cannot say the name because he has his own mini shop. And I could tell you that was a humbling and most rewarding experience is here's a gentleman that has his own shop. The conversation started as he was unable to help us with parts, particularly NOS, because of his business. And out of the blue, Mike, I post these things on a private group, one for to keep people informed of our progress, and also be respectful of my late brother, who was very reserved. So I will never make that a public group. It has to be reserved. And I get this message from Frank. He says, "Hey, I might have that badge that you're looking for." Lord and behold, it was a Morris Cooper S NOS front badge,
Wow.
and I got it. I was I mean, not for what stands Frank, if you're listening to this podcast, and I hope you do, I'm incredibly happy and thrilled and honored to have it. For somebody who has a business of its own, rather than use it in his concourse restoration and allow us the opportunity through excitement and be involved in this story, as many others, to forego of that part, Mike, that was truly one of a kind.
That is a cool pick.
So
Yeah.
for as for myself, what is the modification that I like the most? I think the car as a whole is phenomenal. I'm sure that it's not going to be it's not a figment of my imagination. That when it's done, it will do honors to the original configuration for the rally. I would say that perhaps the speedwell upgrades, and in particular with the camshaft that it had and the exhaust system,
Hmm.
to me probably is going to be the icing on the cake, so to speak. Um, we are Marco mentioned that we have he has been posting and done a great job on Facebook, and it's private. But by all means, if any of the listeners would like to see the progress, I'm sure that Marco and I wouldn't object to have you join. It's just that we want to be respectful of having it a little bit more private,
Of
but
course.
we could share with everyone the passion, and anyone who might have some parts, we'll have a list that we put together. And if you're able to help, by all means, we'll make it
There
across the
we
finish
go.
line.
Hey, this show might get you some more parts. Who knows? Yeah, whatever you
Mm-hmm.
guys send me at the end, I'll post in the show notes. If there's a certain group that maybe people can join to look at, or I know your Instagram has a little bit, but it gives you
Mm-hmm.
an idea at least. You can save the best for the reveal at the end, perhaps, but that's cool. And here's the last Patty Probe question. If you could have a drink, beer, tea, coffee, whatever your drink of choice is, with one mini celeb, who would it be?
Paddy Hardkick, I think I would be the guy. I mean, I would be incredibly. There's other things that come to mind, but you're saying celebrity. I think going back to the '60s and having these guys talk firsthand, what
Hmm.
they were able to do with the car, how they got there. I mean, it would be incredibly. Um, humbling. And not only that, I think it would be also with the supporting the magic behind the curtains. Have the crew over there tell you the things. I mean, I think a lot of the history, Mike, even written in these books, is basically lost in
Yeah.
terms of translation and documentation. That if you were able to speak with them firsthand, it would be such an everlasting experience that I think it will be far above and beyond, not only for me, Mike, but pretty much the listeners here, above the expectations. You will be schooled on minis, per se. Okay?
Yeah.
I would I would second that, but I would say you would be a rally driver, but perhaps someone who doesn't get as much credit as it should. It would be Mrs. Moss, Mr. Sterling Moss's sister, who had race meanies at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Good answer. Cool.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah,
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome stories, guys. I appreciate you guys coming on and telling it. Like I said, for those that were just listening, I'll try to get some pictures from these two to post up on Instagram and my Facebook page, whatever that they think is appropriate. I know there's some cool documents, some cool vintage pictures of their car racing. So again, guys, I appreciate you being on. Any last words, any plugs, where can they find you? Do you want to plug that, or I'll just throw it in the show notes? It's up to you guys.
Yeah, you can. So I go on Facebook as a respect to my brother as Sininhos Junior MC. That's basically the name I go through. Also on Instagram. If you hit me up or if you're willing to participate or hear about the story, I'm sure willing to share it. I'm not saying that this is above and beyond anybody else's story, but this is a significant story. We're still developing some parts that we're looking for. That's secondary. I really, we have Don Rancine, we have Frank with Mini Obsession, and many others who are coming to the rescue to help us. And I think it's because of the story itself and seeing the enthusiasm that we have. We may have dimmed a little bit because of Christmas and so forth, but we have not slowed down. And Mike, it's really tough to get the right parts. And you know me, I can get really down the rabbit hole on period correct, date coded, or
Yeah.
NOS. And some people tell me, hey, listen, you need to chill. I'm like, okay. And it's quite interesting. And so, yes, I mean, we really humbled for the family, friends, and the support of many others, even you, Mike, when we chat and we play around a little bit. I am incredibly thankful for your response, for our sense of humor, for allowing us here on the show today. I mean, we talked for an hour and a half. Hopefully, people will be sitting down, chilling a glass of wine or whatever it be, and enjoy the story. Probably more to come, who knows? But we're incredibly happy for you, Mike, and for starting this mini life podcast. That was the best New Year gift I got. Was your plug of the mini life. I really love it, and I hope that probably I'll be a little sample of you and start something either from a technical perspective or a podcast itself, because I truly love and breathe cars. When I come to it, you can tell I'm rubber lips. I just keep going.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words, guys.
Echoing that thought. Thank you for having us. As far as the plugs, I wouldn't say is a self promotion or whatnot, but anyone who would like to join the history on that's unfolding on Facebook, offer kind words and support. I think it will go a long way. Mike, I wanted to commend you for having the podcast, for everything that you've done and are doing for the community. Who knows, there might be opportunities for us to leverage our knowledge and yours and help whoever needs help. They're not building minis like those anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to do everything that we can to keep the ones on the road if we do enjoy it.
I agree. All right, guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow us at minilife.37 and see you next time.